Register now at beyondzero.or.ke. All Nairobi Sports House branches countrywide, Athletics Kenya Riadha House, or any of the registration centers countrywide. Beyond Zero Half Marathon 2020. I will run.
Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwako na Insurance Regulatory Authority, IRA. Je, wajua kuwa unaweza ukachukua bima ya maisha ili kukidhi mahitaji ya kifedha ya familia yako iwapo utaaga dunia kwa ghafla au baada ya kuugua? Chukua bima ya maisha sasa ili uipe familia yako usalama wa kifedha na akiba kwa ajili ya kesho. Bima ya maisha inakupa uwezo wa kuweka akiba ya baadaye ambayo hulipwa punde tu bima yako itakapokomaa kulingana na wakati uliokubalika. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwako na Insurance Regulatory Authority, IRA. Inastawisha bima, inalinda waliochukua bima. On the next episode of Behind Closed Doors.
How can I trust you, Ignacio? How can I believe in you? It's impossible.
I swear, on all I hold sacred in my life, I swear on the baby that I'm expecting, that I won't tell anyone anything. I swear. For God's sake. I can't be blamed for any of this. I haven't done anything to anyone. Please do it for my baby.
Well, a very good evening to you and welcome to Walking the Talk. My name is Catherine Achenga. Now this evening we continue with the conversation, what is the government doing in the continued war on graft? And specifically, we will be looking at areas that touch on investigations, we will be looking at prosecutions, how many people have been prosecuted, what are some of the challenges that investigators are facing. And of course, I will be engaging persons from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, as well as the DCI. But before I introduce you to the guests who will be joining us in just a bit, let me quickly cross over to Safina Chieng, who is my co-presenter on the other side of the studio, who will give you some of the lines where you can give us your feedback as well as talk to us on Walking the Talk. Over to you, Safina, and good evening to you.
Good evening to you, Achenga. Indeed, it's a conversation that has already begun right here in studio, but we are not doing this alone. We welcome you, our viewer, wherever you're catching this program from, to have your opinion count in the conversation that we are having, which excites me because it's coming at a time when Kenyans are really thirsty for convictions when it comes to cases of corruption. So today we'll be talking about all that, including having all your questions answered with our panel who are in studio this day. Now we will also be interacting with you on social media. That's at KBC Channel 1, at Kato Achenga, at Safin_Acheng. The hashtag we're using for this program is Walking the Talk. So make sure you ask us all the necessary questions that you want answered in this particular broadcast, and we will sure sample some of those as we continue. Today we are asking you, how should the government spend the money that they recover from corruption? What do you think? How should the government spend the money that they recover from corruption? That is one of the questions that is guiding our conversation today. But very quickly, before the conversation begins, also we usually take time to take you through what has been happening throughout the week in the intensified war against corruption. So very quickly, just this particular particular week, as we come to a close, we remember two main issues that happened. On Tuesday, the 25th of February, this particular year, we remember there was a landmark agreement. It's the very first time this is happening, that was signed between embattled Nairobi Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko and Devolution Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa. This was done in the presence of President Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, this happened and led to the surrendering of 4 key functions of Nairobi County, and this touched on the county health services, the county transport services, the county planning and development services, county public works, utilities, and ancillary services. Now, the reason we are taking you through this is because Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko is facing a corruption-related case that saw Nairobi County lose about 357 million shillings. Now, this is a landmark agreement that actually would show what could happen to other counties going to the future. They are basing this on Article 187 of the Constitution that provides that such functions can be transferred if the function or power would be more effectively performed or exercised by the receiving government. In this case is the national government. And of course, another condition, such powers can be transferred if the function or power is not prohibited by the legislation under which it is to be performed or exercised. Now, there was also something else that happened this particular week, just to take you through that, to see what we are doing in terms of some of the cases that are going on. The Anti-Corruption Court at Milimani dismissed the petition by Nairobi Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko that was seeking to block the 357 graft case against him. Now, Sonko was arguing that the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission had obtained evidence against him illegally in this particular case, so he wanted this case to be brought to a halt. But then again, the EACC defended itself in this particular case and said that they had informed Sonko of the probe to his accounts on the 3rd of September 2019. Of course, we'll be taking you through such events as we continue, just so you can track what is happening with the cases that we have in the corridors of justice that touch on corruption, and of course, what the government is doing in the intensified war against corruption. In the meantime, continue interacting with us on social media at KBC Channel 1. We are using the hashtag Walking the Talk. Back to you, Achenga.
Well, thank you, Safin. Of course, engages. She will be back in just a bit to sample some of your thoughts. But for now, let me introduce you to the panelists who are joining me in studio. On my immediate left, I have with me Alexander Muteti, who is the Senior Assistant Director at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. It's good to have you this evening, Alexander.
Thank you.
Well, next to him, we have Susan Kinyeki, who is the Deputy Director in charge of Reporting and Data Center at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. It's good to have you this evening.
Thank you.
And lastly, we have with us the police spokesperson, Charles Owino, who is representing the Office of the DCI. It's good to have you with us this evening. And I want to pick this conversation from, what Safin has just been highlighting, the continued war against graft and the issues of investigations. So I'll begin with you, and just looking at, the process of the investigations, the fact that now we are seeing, governors who are implicated in graft being asked by the courts to step aside. How does it help in your investigations when it comes to graft cases?
Thank you so much, Chenga. First of all, it is important to note that the war against corruption is a war not just for government per se, but it's a war for the republic and the citizens, because money is meant for development and for all of us to enjoy facilities. Government works on behalf of the people, and that is why government is elected by the people. And for that reason, government has all the responsibilities to ensure that when they have channels to have money collected in one single basket, which is put in the treasury and then distributed equally for purposes of development, that money should be there. But when money is distributed and then the persons to whom they have been entrusted to use them for development convert them into their personal use, then it becomes a bit difficult. We as state agencies, especially state agencies in the criminal justice system, we have a responsibility on behalf of the state to ensure that we undertake our responsibilities, especially investigative responsibilities, which is given to Criminal Investigations Department and Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. But we undertake investigations even at lower levels of the police station level, where we undertake various levels of investigations at the crime branch level as we escalate it up. But the most important thing in the society is impunity is developed because you find that there is no fear, because people know no action would be taken. So currently, with the fact that governors or senior government officers can be arrested and be asked to stay out of office as investigations continue, it has brought in a lot of sanity, and it manages impunity automatically, in the sense that there's some fear that is created amongst us or amongst the people given those positions to manage. So most importantly, when there is fear, when people know that you can be investigated, you will be arrested, and you will be taken to court, they'll fear. Because always people feel if they have stolen a lot of money, then they'll be able to compromise their ways through, or they'll go to court, continue sitting in offices, and continue stealing. So once you've been told that you'll step aside, then at least there's fear. So I think as it sits today, as we are today, we are a bit safer. The public is a bit safer in terms of management of their finances, because those given responsibility fear that if there is any issue, they'll be investigated, they'll be caught, and they'll be prosecuted. Yes.
Susan, in terms of investigations from ESCC's point of view, how many cases have you been able to prosecute to conclusion? Because there's a general feeling among the public that we keep going around in circles, but when it comes to the actual prosecutions, we are not really seeing that happen.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I go to the cases, maybe I can just bring us up to speed on what Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission does. Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is a constitutional commission pursuant to Article 79, mandated to undertake various things. Number one, enforcement. Today we are talking about the enforcement. That is the issue of arresting governors. And I want to say that up to now, we have charged 4 governors, which for us, we think it's a very good thing, because it sets the tone at the top that, engaging in corruption doesn't pay. Number 2, we do education. This program, we are going to do public education. The other thing we do is systems review. And systems review, we come into institution and look at the processes, procedures, and practices in place, and we advise you against, sealing the same. We also do something we call promotion of ethics and integrity in public service. Basically, this is pursuant to Chapter 6 of the Constitution. We ensure that public officers actually live up to the expected mandate. Remember, as state officers, the threshold is higher than public officers. Now, coming to matters investigation, I want to start by saying that investigations begins with a report. We, as the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, can investigate in 2 ways. We can be proactive, or we can receive a report. Now, how do you receive a report? You can receive a report in various ways. You can send an email, you can go anonymous, you can do, we are also on social media, you can go to newspapers, and you can go to 11 Huduma centers, 11 regional offices across the country. We also have Huduma centers where you can walk in and we receive your report. Now, when we receive our report, what happens? When you receive our report, we take it through our processes. There's what we call the 5 Ws and 1 H. That is, we ask what happened, who did it, why did they do it, when did they do it, where was it done, and how much. So taking through your report,
that is when you get information from the public.
Yes. Okay. So we got, even in what is in the public domain, we got information from the members of public, and I want to encourage members of public to report to us. After reporting to us, we take it through case allocation and prioritization committee. As you will understand, we don't have all the resources to investigate all cases. So we look at the priority, and we use this priority based on 3 things. Number 1, personality involved, the amounts involved, and impact on society. As you have rightly said, we have charged 4 governors because of their status at the national level. So in terms of investigation, we have 1,500 cases ongoing now at different stages. And I want to say that even as
these 4 cases that you're indicating, the 4 governors, at what stage are their cases? Because the feeling is, yes, they are charged, but we never get to the end of it. Now the case just keeps revolving in court.
Now let me explain to you what happens. When we get this report, it goes through our processes. After finishing the investigation, we prepare what we call Section 35 report. As you rightly know, Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission does not have prosecutorial powers. We only prosecute on civil matters. For example, the Woodley which has just come out 3 days ago. That we have prosecutorial powers. But matter criminal, we do not have prosecutorial powers. So after preparing the Section 35 report, the law says that we forward it to DPP for prosecution.
Okay. So let's pick it up from DPP. What happens when it gets to your office?
Yes, thank you. When it comes to matters prosecution, I think it's important that we debunk some myth that has been really harped by quite a number of people that DPP is not doing anything, just taking people to court and nothing is happening.
And prosecuting them on
Far
Twitter.
from it, because those governors are out of office courtesy of the action of the DPP, no one else. In fact, when we made the first application, everybody was laughing at us in town, thinking we are out of our minds and we have absolutely no idea what we are doing. The fact is this: you take a case to court, remember the accused persons have their rights. There are many processes and procedural safeguards that the law has put in place that also suspects of graft, just like anybody else, would want to take advantage of. For instance, you will have constitutional petitions filed seeking to stop prosecutions.
Yes.
You will have judicial review applications filed seeking to stop prosecutions, so that for the DPP, once the case lands in court, then somebody else takes the driver's seat, and that is the court, in the sense that the court will be able to guide us. What date can you be heard? For instance, if you went to Milimani today and you are told we have no dates until September, what do you do about it? As the DPP, you cannot take somebody to Uhuru Park and prosecute them from there. You can only do it from court.
But there was a specific court that was meant to deal with graft. is it?
Precisely.
Yes.
There is a special division of the court. But remember, these courts also have their own challenges in terms of capacity. We are still stuck to the old systems where recording of court proceedings is manually done. You are dealing with a purely manual process that is very slow at times, very painfully so. You have quite a number of suspects being charged in one case, and each one of them brings as many lawyers as they can afford. So in one single case, you could find yourself handling about 20 lawyers, and everybody wants to cross-examine years on end, asking questions that sometimes don't even make a lot of sense. But you cannot stop them because the Constitution under Article 50 gives every Kenyan the right to a fair trial. So we must work within the law. But the fact is, and this is the assurance that I would want to give Kenyans on behalf of the DPP, we are doing everything that as an office we can do to make sure these cases progress. But we can only work within the law.
Is it possible to fast track this?
Yes, I would say so, in the sense that we are now doing cases back to back, meaning you take a date. For instance, we have one case now running, the Samburu governor's case. We have a whole month slated, 3 days every week to hear this case.
Yes.
But we are moving. The danger of us trying to think that we can have a case concluded in a day is this: the same persons that you seek to prosecute, if you go through a bungled process and the case fails at the end of the day because of technicalities, then you will be blamed by the very same public. So let us be patient. Everything that is supposed to be done from our end is being done. And I can say without any fear of contradiction, we are making progress. If there was a time that the war on corruption was about to be won, it is now. Yeah.
Charles, there have been, those claims that sometimes, evidence disappears, or, the evidence that is brought is not sufficient to be able to carry the case. As you know, the Office of the DCI, what are you doing to ensure that the evidence, once you present it, in court, it actually becomes admissible and you're able to close up a case?
First of all, before I go to evidence, I just wanted to add on something which Madam Kinyeki said about when we begin cases, where she said that most of the times we get reports.
Yes.
But equally, we also rely on intelligence reports. Apart from the physical reports that we get, we also get a lot of reports
from the public.
In terms of intelligence,
yes,
including our intelligence department in the country. And also, we can investigate you depending on your lifestyle. We can look at you and we know you are a Chenga, and we know Chenga, this is what you earn. So we have to question you, and you have to justify to us that maybe our opinion is not right, yeah, because of maybe one reason or another. Now, in terms of evidence, when a matter is reported, I wish I would be in a position to, it's not good to use jargon, but I wish I would be in a position to define what evidence is and to explain it, because I've taught that. So, but most important is when a matter is reported, for example, a matter on corruption.
Yes.
Corruption is, at a general level, is a big thing. But you see, corruption is at different levels depending on what you actually did. For example, when it comes to contracts, maybe the problem lies with maybe the procurement process, and that is what we are relying on, or sometimes loss of money, whatever it is. And also evidence depends also on the persons that, because a lot of factors are involved in evidence. For example, if you are investigating somebody who has stolen money, and there are cases involving, let's say, investigation into bank accounts, statements of various individuals. There are a lot of people that are involved in it. You cannot take somebody to court before you are satisfied that you have enough evidence to be able to sustain that charge. And also, once we have prepared our case file and our case file is ready, whether it is EACC or whether it is a criminal investigation or at a level of a police station, we take the files to DPP. Because DPP are the prosecutors. They'll have to read evidence and be satisfied that that evidence can sustain a prosecution. He can stand before court. Because once this matter goes to court, he's told you there'll be lawyers defending the accused person. And they will be defending our position as investigators, because we don't go prosecuting. It's them who will prosecute. In the process of reading the file, if they find that that file cannot sustain a charge, or they feel there are facts that we have not covered, they'll always write and bring back the file to us and tell us this is not sustainable, and it comes back to us.
But in some incidences, we've seen, the case begin, then somewhere in the middle, the witnesses decide that now they don't want to continue being witnesses, bringing us back to the question of witness protection.
The issue of witness protection is slightly different. Witnesses are protected especially when we believe that maybe their lives are at risk. Or even sometimes we believe that they may be compromised. So there are so many areas in which we undertake witness protection to protect those particular witnesses out of fear. But it is not very easy also for you to run away from the evidence which you had already given us. There's a process that DPP will be able to tell you if you retract from the evidence that you had already recorded or you had already given. There's a process which they use to ensure that professionally that is undertaken. But it's not very easy
to walk away from it. All right, Alexander, how rampant is the problem of witnesses choosing that now they have been intimidated perhaps, or they have been paid and now they don't want to participate in the case anymore?
Thank you. The nature of economic crime is so complex to the extent that today you have a good witness seated with you at Mr. Owino's desk or Susan's desk, record a very beautiful statement. You take them to court. When you lead them, there are three types of examination that we do in court. The first one is examination in chief. That is where, as a prosecutor, I will lead the witness through his statement. They come out very beautifully well and make a very good case for you so that you take your seat as a prosecutor. Immediately that happens, you get the defense counsel stand up and they start asking questions. Now that is where the rubber meets the road. A witness who had been giving you a very beautiful story quickly turns and assumes the seat of the accused person and quickly starts defending them. So it's a real challenge, and we must accept it is our society, our people must change. If this is a ballpoint, say it as it is. Let people not pretend that they are magic that can be done by courts or prosecutors or investigators. If the people themselves don't even believe in what they are supposed to be doing to assist the process, the idea of witnesses turning hostile has become so common. And I can tell you from experience in economic crimes, it should not surprise anyone that a witness who has been cooperative all along with investigators, with prosecutors, The moment they get to court, you see a totally different face. That is the Kenyan you are dealing with.
So why do people change, in your view, Susan? Why is it that
Yes.
people decide now they don't want to continue with the case?
Now, before I talk about why people change, let me talk about evidence. Now, at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, we are mandated to fight economic crime. When you talk about economic crime, you're basically talking about things with abuse of office. When you talk about investigation, you go for paper trail. You don't go for rumors. Remember, when you drag this person to court, it will not be your word against theirs. It will be, you broke this law, you are supposed to follow this regulation, you didn't, etc. So
But
the
is
issue
it
of
easy
paper
to
trail.
prove graft when it comes to following a paper trail?
Oh yes, in fact, you cannot secure a conviction unless you have proved that actually that law was broken. Now, let me talk about paper trail. If you have a piece of evidence missing in file, I can assure you, first of all, DPP will not take that person to court. So you will be commenting on document that there is this regulation that you didn't do ABCD. You're supposed to constitute a committee, you did not. You signed these minutes, etc. So I want to say that investigation is not rumors. And remember, as Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and indeed law enforcement agency, we have to be very careful because we are the ones charging. In the event that that case fails, they can actually sue us for defamation.
Yes.
So we have to be extremely careful. So I want to stress the issue of paper trail. Now, the issue of evidence, it is true that some witnesses end up being compromised or they just fear. And I want to disabuse ourselves. There is some cultural norm that if you adduce evidence in court, it's you to be jailed. That is not true. Actually, if you adduce evidence in court, you are helping the prosecution secure a conviction. But something happens in between. The time in the record statement, as you know, the law requires that you give what thou that alleges must prove the crime. So the law requires that you give whatever you want to rely. For example, Chenga, if I was to charge you, the law requires that everything that I want to rely on, I give it to you. Now, when I give it to you, there are telephone numbers there. You and me live in this society. You start compromising my witnesses. A witness which was on this target become what you call a hostile witness. What do you do?
Hostile in the sense that now they don't want to continue with the case.
No, he retracts.
He retracts his statement. He says, I was told, I signed that statement at the duress. Those were not my statement. I was, asked to sign this and this is not the truth.
Threatened.
Or threatened. You know, so the witnesses disappear. And I can tell you, in court, it's not about hearsay. What the witness is saying, I, as the investigation officer or investigating officer, come in and say what I thought happened.
Charles, is it that the witnesses or Kenyans don't feel safe, entrusting the police with this information? That is why perhaps they'd rather, take a backseat than rely on the police to protect them?
I think investigations is a straightforward thing because it's very easy to know that you are a Chenga and not a Chieng. You see, in terms of spelling of the two names are different. So in investigations, you start from a very basic level and you advance it depending on more information that you get. Like when she talks about paper trail, one paper leads you to another until you come to the conclusion. The only problem is that corruption is sometimes very big, and I think we had left corruption to grow too big in the society. And corruption fights back most of the time. If it's big money, because nobody wants to be jailed. So a person will use all means possible to try to defeat justice. At the same time, we are under pressure from you, the public, that we must arrest people and we must take these people to court. And every person remains innocent until proven guilty. And all this comes with rights. Even when you are recording a statement, there are standard procedures in law how you are supposed to record a statement. If you don't take somebody's confession appropriately, then it's possible for him to become hostile, and it will be impossible for you to justify the hostility that he has. So even from when you are recording even the statement and taking a confession, the DPP will make sure that we took that confession in the right procedure as provided for by law. Even when we are asking for a document from court, you see us wearing affidavits. You see people saying that we did not inform them. You have to inform someone to get to know. So what happens is that standard procedure of investigations according to law must be undertaken, and we must go through the whole process of investigations. Even if you quarrel and say, oh, you've been investigating so and so for so long, how come he has not gone to court? It's because we don't want a situation where we will take somebody to court, the person will be acquitted, and then the government will also have to pay the consequence of even the person suing the state and asking for compensation. So we must go through a full investigative process, which must be done within the procedures of the law. So that and that is why we would just be taking people to court. I know Akina Susan have always said they want prosecutorial powers. I wish I was them. I would not. I would still insist I just carry out investigations and give it to Bwana Muteti to go through, because also it protects us, because at least there's a third party. You remember even before we used to have policemen as prosecutors, and now it has gone fully to DPP.
To the DPP.
Because those days we still didn't have enough lawyers. Now we have enough, and therefore they can do the job. But it also protects us, because I've done my work, I hand it over to him, he does his work, and it also gives because sometimes we even propose people as witnesses, and they refuse. They say, no, we must judge this person, he's not going to be a witness. Sometimes we want to prosecute somebody, they say, no, you cannot prosecute this one. This is the man with the information that will help us pin this person down. So that balance is important. It is important to know, under the criminal justice system, there is no competition amongst us. We work for the interest of the state to ensure that the state achieves the objective.
All right, we want to take a break, but when we come back, Alexander, perhaps you'll be telling us the hostile witnesses.
Yes.
What implications does it have for them if you choose now to turn? Does the law come after you for changing your mind? You'll tell us about that, but after this short break. Of course, the discussion today centering on the continued war on graft, and particularly we are focusing on investigations and prosecutions. Of course, I'm engaging Charles Owino, who is the police spokesperson representing the DCI. We also have with us Alexander Muteti, who is the Senior Assistant Director at the Office of the DPP, Susan Kinyeki, who is the Deputy Director in charge of Reporting and Data Center at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. We take a short break, but when we come back, we'll also be hearing from you as well as our audience in studio. So don't go too far. We come back shortly.
The FA Cup 5th round has lined up interesting ties as Arsenal travel for the second time to the South Coast to face the lowest ranked side, Portsmouth, at Fratton Park.
Bill Cannon now is with Close on his right side, finds the corner! Tinelli to Saka, fantastic goal from young Bukayo Saka. It's his third of the season, sweetly struck.
Watch it live this Monday on KBC Channel 1 at 10:45 p.m. This weekend on KBC Channel 1.
Straight from the point, kuna mpangaji kule wa kike atakwenda tengenezwa stage show.
Stage show?
Ile ya kuwekea vyombo ile.
Mimi fundi. Wala hata kufanani kwanza. Utalipwa na nani malipo ya hiyo stage show?
Bure.
Kazi zake zote kwani kwa wanawake.
Amaliza vijumba huyo. Anayata koma yeye. Nini wewe? Fundi gani huyu? Mimi mama pia simjui huyu fundi. Acha kunikoroga wewe. Toka na lungu kichwa cha zunguka kila upande jamaa.
Mimi ndiye aliwata njoo. Wazungu wanasema it's okay.
On the next episode of Elena's Ghost.
Today you will experience the most important moment of your life.
At last, the three of us are together again. The way it should be. Soon the day will come when we can all be happy again, like before.
What have you done?
Welcome back. If you're joining us, you're watching Walking the Talk. Our focus on discussion this evening, the continued war on graft, and particularly looking at investigations and prosecutions. What are some of the challenges, and how can the agencies that are tasked with this particular job ensure that they conclude some of these cases and the taxpayers' money actually gets back to development. But before we continue with the discussion, it's time for us to hear from you back at home. And so I will be handing it over to Safina Cheng just to give us your feedback, your thoughts, and also any questions that you have to our panelists this evening. Over to you, Safina. What do you have for us?
A lot is happening on social media, Chienga, and remember, wherever you're watching us from, we do appreciate your feedback at KBC Channel 1, at Kato Achenga, at Safin_Acheng. The hashtag we're using for this conversation is Walking the Talk. On Facebook, Apostle Key Technology, we asked you, how should the government spend money recovered from corruption? Apostle Key Technology, you say by building primary schools in rural and marginalized areas. And Peter Nyaoke, you suggest that all this money should be directed back to the National Treasury. On Twitter as well, Silvanas Ndaso, you say the government needs to be sincere on the war against corruption. When the government targets those on the opposing ideologies, it doesn't make sense. Hashtag Walking the Talk. Thank you so much for your feedback. I'll be taking more as we continue. But remember, we also have a studio audience who we also be giving their questions to the panel, and of course their opinions. We'll be crossing over to them so that we can take some of their questions. But remember, continue interacting with us on social media. We will sample those views as we continue. Achenga?
All right, thank you, Safin. And of course, as you prepare to engage the studio audience, interesting question there. What really do you think that the government should be doing in terms of how will they spend the money that has been recovered from corruption? And of course, the majority of Kenyans focused on development, issues to do with our education, building of schools is one of the comments that we have seen. And there are those who are saying that this money should be directed back to the National Treasury. There, of course, it will be distributed to the counties as well as get to the public in terms of development. So keep giving us your feedback. Of course, we'll be sampling them in just a bit. But of course, now it is time for us to engage our audience in studio. Safin, I believe you're ready to take the questions from our audience before, which will be addressed to our panelists this evening.
Right. Yeah, of course we have a studio audience, and just by a show of hands, just any question for our panel, you may be able to present that. Okay, go ahead.
My name is Andrew Shonko.
Your name is?
Andrew Shonko.
Okay.
And it's evident from the conversation that we're having right now that the issue of fighting corruption is an issue that needs a multi-criterion approach, bearing in mind that we have various agencies that are doing this work. And it's evident that in one way or the other, we are not actually seeing anything tangible. And that maybe could be alluded to the fact that it's something that it's a processional. You do your part, you give to the next person, to the next agency, and so on. And people out there actually really need to see what is happening. And I really wanted to see someone from the judiciary, because that is where the last baton...
Please ask a question. Ask a question.
My question will be maybe, is it the judiciary that is actually not doing this work, or where is the issue lying?
Yeah. I believe you'll be able to take that question.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Let me not purport to speak for the judiciary, but let me say this. The judiciary has a duty to assist all other agencies of government in fighting corruption. That is beyond question. Under the executive, we have the multi-agency task team, which incorporates the three of us seated here, DBP, DCI, ESCC. We also have KRA on board, and everybody in charge of enforcement. When we get to the judiciary, then as you've rightly pointed out, we expect, again, that other hand, because it's one of the arms of government. There is a mistaken belief that the judiciary is not part of government. Nothing can be further from the truth, because it is the third arm of government. So there is a certain expectation, and I understand Kenyans when they express their frustration.
Yeah.
What we are doing, we will take cases to them, and make no mistake, we went to the same law schools. When my friend here from ESCC gives me a file, I look at it, I'll give it a professional assessment. As a lawyer, I'll take it to court, we will test that evidence. with the other defense attorney who will be defending the accused person, then let us be given a fair hearing and we get a decision that we can all live and celebrate. We are very happy. In fact, so far with the move to bar governors from sitting in offices and persons who hitherto thought they could not be removed from office when they were charged, that is a very positive development and we encourage them. If the judiciary could keep that spirit and on our part as the executive we do our bit, then I'm sure we are going to win this war. Just to touch on one thing that...
no, we really need to move. We really need to move. But thank you. Thank you, Anne, as well, for your question. Let's take the next question.
My name is John Gashoka, and my question is first directed to Charles and Muteti. There is a concern from public that the leadership of the leadership of DCI and the leadership of DPP, there is bad blood among you. And could this in any way be affecting the process of justice and the process of bringing criminals or corruption criminals to justice? The next question is...
Just one question, one question, so that everyone can have a chance. Charles, respond to that. Is there bad blood between you and the office of the DPP?
I think it's a wrong perception brought by the roles that each institution is supposed to undertake. We undertake primary role of investigations. We investigate, we collect evidence, we put it together and we forward it to DPP to read it. DPP have a very crucial role in court to play. They have a role to prosecute that case. As much as we collect the evidence, we prepare a file and we forward it to them, they have a very heavy role to play in court. Remember, these cases, most of the time they'll be defended by people with very good education levels, very intelligent persons. And there's another arbitrator called a magistrate or a judge seated there also to listen to the matter and make decisions. Now, when it goes to Muteti from our office, they equally have a right to go through it, process it. So sometimes there can be jittery from the public because we have told the public we have forwarded the file to DPP, but they are not seeing the file going to court. So they wonder, they think that when we take files to DPP, then automatically they will go to court. Maybe they are also advising, writing back to us, telling us, no, you have skipped this place and that place. So it's upon the public to ensure that our relationship is intact because much of this thing is escalated unnecessarily. Okay. Unless we come out in the open and we accuse them, which we have not done so far, unless we come up in the open and we accuse them and we say, no, we have brought this case to you, we think it is watertight, and you are not taking it to court and you are not bringing it back to us. Because if they don't take it to court, they should bring it back to us. They're not supposed to keep it. Okay. That is the position.
Alexander,
so I don't think there is any bad blood so far.
Let's hear from you why the public thinks there is bad blood between you and the DCI.
I think it's a misconception. The DPP is not a conveyor belt. He's not just supposed to receive files and transmit them to court. We must look at the evidence. Does it support the charges that are proposed by the investigators? If it doesn't meet the evidential test, the case dies there. Second consideration, public interest. Is it in the public interest that we charge this person? Because you must remember this. It is not just about the number of cases you take to court, but the quality of those cases. Okay. So we must run a quality check on evidence and public interest. If it doesn't meet that, it may be a very unpopular decision for us to say we are not prosecuting, but we have that mandate under the Constitution. Because if we don't do so, again, the same public that is crying to see people being taken to court will be talking about rushed prosecutions that have absolutely no basis. And that is why we exist. And as Kenyans, you gave us that constitutional role, we continue discharging it.
Okay. Let's continue getting feedback from our audience.
Yes. Yes. My name is Josephine Maingi, and my question is...
Just speak up louder.
Yeah, my name is Josephine Maingi, and my question is, what is the government doing about sensitizing the public on their roles? I've heard you talk about the witnesses not doing their duty well when they are given time to give evidence in court. So supposing we do it from the school level, the young ones grow up knowing that it is their duty. So what is the government doing about it? Thank you.
Susan, I'll let you take that one. Civic education.
Yeah, thank you very much, Josephine. Now, one of our mandates is public education. And what we have done as Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, we are working with tertiary institutions, we are working with the secondary schools, we are working with universities, we are working with faith-based institutions, and even the Mama Boga, not forgetting the public service. And how we do it is that we look at the reports that are coming through. Because remember, the reports that come through, some of them are not actionable. They are not pursuable in terms of the criminal element. And what we do is that we educate members of public. Probably you may not have interacted with our any of our education program. And I want to urge you to visit our website so that you can actually see the kind of people that we have educated. But I must say that Kenyans are very much aware of issues corruption. When we do our perception survey, we actually find that Kenyans know very well what corruption is all about. The problem is that they do not want to report. But those who report, because for example, every month at Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, we receive 700 reports. And most of these reports
700 the whole month? 700
the whole month. Yeah, it's 700, 600, thereabout. And out of these 700, half of them are outside our mandate. What do I mean? They are not actionable. They are not investigative, in nature. They are like, for example, somebody has taken somebody else's piece of land and they are requesting EACC to intervene. EACC will not intervene in such case. Or it's a Ministry of Education affair, or somebody has, administrative in nature. So half of those are not actually outside our mandate. So that helps us to pick the issues. What are the public complaining about? And we're able to customize our education programs in that regard. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Of course, we thank you for your feedback. We'll continue taking them if time allows. But I want us to continue with this discussion, and I want to go back to you, Alex. Before we went for the break, you were to highlight how exactly is it the issue to do with the question was actually hostile witnesses. Thank you.
Okay. On the question of hostile witnesses, two things. One, once a witness becomes hostile in the course of giving evidence, we apply to declare that person hostile and then seek to cross-examine them, basically testing what they are telling us against what they had given us before. The consequence is that that evidence becomes useless to either parties.
But is there any recourse for them?
Yes, there is a recourse. If you come to court and you swear to tell the truth and you start unpacking lies for us, there is the law on perjury. We will charge you. So that everybody should understand, you don't just come to the investigative agencies, present complaints against people. When they get to court, then you turn it into business of just running, rings around everyone.
Are there people who you have charged with perjury?
Perjury. At present, I wouldn't give you a case in point, but I know we have declared enough witnesses hostile. Because again, at times it is a delicate balancing thing. You charge people, there is also the backlash that you get out of it. Others tomorrow will not come forward and give evidence. But we have found a way of going around these things, and we are thinking through it. That is why we are kicking out public officials out of office, so that we prevent that happening at the back of their offices, because the witnesses more often than not are scared of speaking against their bosses. So that is one measure we have taken.
Our time is running out, so I'll give you just a moment to sum up the continued war on graft, and particularly looking at it in terms of the war on graft and the politics around it. How do we balance the two and ensure that what you're doing, Charles, politics doesn't interfere with it, and the public starts saying it's about politics and no longer about prosecution of individuals?
We as the police, where the DCI falls under, I've always said this, that we are not an independent arm of government, like judiciary, like parliament, but we fall under the executive. And basically, I term ourselves as the tool of the executive. We are that public prefect that the government uses. Governments change. Today we have this government, after 5 years we'll have another government. But the institutions remain. So we remain tools of the executive. We are the prefect that is used to ensure that law and order is maintained and enforcement. That's what we do. And therefore, when it comes to a particular level, for example, when we are now dealing with criminal investigations.
Yeah.
The government has mandated us. We are the sole institution. We have been given a responsibility to ensure that we carry out these investigations. And they had to be brought in to give us a bigger support and an art of specialization to ensure that economic crimes, we have a particular institution that has time, because as we do so many things, we do murder cases, those who have stolen chicken, those who have stolen money, you know, petty things. We do everything. So we have that role, a mandate as an institution. It's not, it is not a role that you can say that we are doing a favor to anybody. No. It's a role that we have been employed for. It's a role that we do. And I'm happy because of one thing. I think the previous years, long time before, when people heard about CID, there was fear. Then I think somewhere the fear went. And then currently, I'm sure that when people hear that they are going to Kiambu Road, they even fear much more. Me, I don't mind that fear, because
your time is up.
An institution, no, a family that there is no fear, things, impunity grows further. So I think that fear is important.
It's important.
And I think so far, so good.
Okay.
Yeah.
From where you sit as the SCC, would you say we are winning this war on graft as we wind up?
I would say yes, we are winning this war on graft, albeit slowly. And I say this with a lot of conviction, because as the person in charge of the reports and data center, we get reports based on the high and mighty. And for us, remember we talked about 3 criteria: personality, amounts involved, and impact on society. The fact that we have charged 4 governors, I can assure you all governors are on notice. They can see that it is not just about, they can't finish their 5 years in the event that they have a graft charge, a graft charge against them. So I can say that we are winning the war against corruption. Talk about issues of asset recovery.
Will we get to a point where, you know, governors will not be cleared to, persons will not be cleared to contest in the first place because of graft-related cases?
Now, pursuant to our chapter 6, we have the vetting module. If today any public officer is seeking you know, to serve in public service, they come to us and we look through our system. And I can assure you, Achenga, we have over 10,000 records. And in the event that we find a governor or a public officer has been adversely mentioned, we tell the hiring institution that this person has this and this pending before them. So I can say that we are winning the war against corruption. If you look at the assets that we have recovered today, over 30 billion. If you look at the disruption, and let me disabuse ourselves from the fact that it is the war on corruption is not necessarily only going to be won in courts. There is also what we call administrative action. Under our ethics mandate, we caution public officers, we issue advisories, we even take administrative action. For example, even in the police, DPP has told us very clearly that sometimes it is not possible to prosecute maybe 1,000 shillings person, you know, given the cost-benefit analysis. That person will take admin action, and I can assure you we've taken quite an administrative action based on the same.
All right.
Yes.
From where you sit, will we win this war? And how are you going to work, all of you, to ensure that corruption is a thing of the past?
From our end, I can assure you, if what we have seen so far is anything to go by, we are winning this war. All we require is support from every Kenyan in whatever office that they sit. Because as long as there are certain agencies of government that are not complementing the effort of the DPP, the DCI, or ESCC, then I can assure you we have a problem. But the fact is, where we have reached, so far we have caused major disruption. The corruption networks are on notice. But let me make it clear here. It is not about politics. And anybody talking about politics, they are in for a rude shock.
All right. Thank you all very much for coming to our studios this evening and shedding light on what the different agencies are doing, working together to try and fight the problem of corruption in this country. Well, we have been talking to Charles Owino, who is the police spokesman representing the DCI this evening. We also had with us Alexander Muteti, who is the Senior Assistant Director at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, as well as Susan Kinyiki, the Deputy Director in charge of Reporting and Data Center at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. My name is Catherine Achenga. Let me quickly hand you over to Safin to take your final round of comments, as well as to tell you bye-bye from Walking the Talk this evening. Over to you, Safin.
Thank you, Achenga, and thank you all who have been sharing your views. Nancy Kamango, you say we are not just instilling fear, but we want people to be prosecuted, and soon this vice will not be present in our society. society. And of course, John Caleb, if there is a time that the war on corruption is going to be won, then it is now. Thank you so much for your feedback. Not just in Biba, we are the solution in the fight against corruption. We cannot wait for solutions to come from elsewhere. Thank you so much. That is well put. John Kamau, you say, I love that we are having positive conversations about corruption and the steps being taken towards corrupt leaders and business people. Thank you so much. Maggie, you say the war against corruption isn't one that the government can fight. It's a fight that only the individual can fight. What if we all did our part? And that is the question that will bring us to a conclusion. Thank you so much as we ponder over that question. What are you doing in your own small corner of the world to fight corruption? Let's not wait on the government. Let's also carry the cross and play our part wherever we are. My name is Safin Achieng Oma. Thank you so much for you who shared your views. And thank you to our studio audience who added value to our conversation today. We see you next time, same place, same time.
This weekend on KBC Channel 1.
Straight of the point, kuna mpangaji kule wa kike hata kwenda tengenezwa stage show.
Stage show?
Ili ya kuwekea vyombo ili.
Mimi fundi.
Wala hata hufanani kwanza. Utalipwa na nani malipo ya hiyo stage show?
Bure.
Kazi zake zote kwani kwa wanawake.
Amaliza vijumba huyu.
Anayata koma yeye.
Nini wewe? Fundi gani huyu?
Mimi mama pia simjui huyu fundi.
Acha kunikoroga wewe.
Toka na lungu kichwa cha zunguka kila upande jamani.
Mimi ndiye aliwata mchwa.
Wazungu wanasema it's okay.
On the next episode of Behind Closed Doors.
How can I trust you, Ignacia? How can I believe in you? It's impossible.
I swear, on all I hold sacred in my life, I swear on the baby that I'm expecting, that I won't tell anyone anything. I swear. For God's sake. I can't be blamed for any of this. I haven't done anything to anyone. Please do it for my baby.
The FA Cup 5th round has lined up interesting ties as Arsenal travel for the second time to the South Coast to face the lowest ranked side, Portsmouth, at Fratton Park.
Bill Cannon now is with Close on his right side, finds the corner! Tinelli to Saka, fantastic goal from young Bukayo Saka. It's his third of the season, sweetly struck.
Watch it live this Monday on KBC Channel 1 at 10:45 p.m. Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Look. Everything is in our favor. Now I'll have justice. I'll have my father's inheritance. I'll have fists full of money.
Machako